I felt quite lost in my place, not really feeling like anybody actually knew who I was. Yeah, by about March I was well and truly bedridden. Didn't have the capacity to walk to the toilet by myself, didn't have the capacity to do the dishes, cook dinner, check the mail, nothing. And then just as I was coming out of that and I was all geared up to do the TEDx talk, I had an ovarian cyst burst. We were really struggling financially, we were on church food boxes, op shop clothes, and vouchers for the op shops. Like, it took a lot to come out of that. After that conversation, the counsellor said to me, look, I'm really sorry, but I'm not qualified to help your child. Why have I, or why we do this, spent so much of our life trying to be something that we're not? Why do I want to do this? Do I want to do this? It really did push me off that cliff of wanting to know more and wanting to understand. I want to work with people who not only know how to get where I want to go, but how to take me further than I even dream is possible. You've got a little baby head.
Testing 1, 2. Where is sound?
Your camera's just moved.
Oops. It's all about you anyway, Nerida. Oh no. Coffee stain. Alright, welcome everyone. Welcome to the Success Minded podcast. My name's Kane, and today we're going to be interviewing an amazing person by the name of Nerida Mills. She's a mother of 3 children. She's an entrepreneur, a facilitator, an embodiment specialist, change maker. I'm still yet to learn what those things are, but we'll find out soon enough. She's a keynote speaker and she's made it onto TEDx. And I had the very good fortune of meeting her at the Life Coaching Institute. And I can still remember the first time I heard her speak. I was like, I need to get to know this person. I was an absolute rookie in comparison to where she was at that point in her life, and I had the very good fortune of doing tryouts with her through the Life Coaching Institute. But that's enough about me. Today we're here to talk about Nerida. So Nerida, thank you for joining me today.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really, really grateful that I've been able to make the time for you guys today.
My pleasure. So would you be able to, I guess, to get the ball rolling, what was life like for you as a teenager?
As a teenager? Oh, that's a fun question. Oh, goodness. So I guess as a teenager for me, I felt like there were 2 sides of my personality, essentially. So I had what I call my school persona, and that was, I was very much into leadership. I put my hand up for anything extracurricular. I was student counsellor for 5 out of 6 years in high school. Really wanted to be involved in organising and creating anything that I could. I think partly because I'm a bit of a control freak and I want to make sure that it's going to happen my way, and was doing really well in school in that sense, had good relationships with my teachers and things like that. And then I had this other persona, which was a little bit more of the, I guess, unconscious emotional stuff that I was trying to process, and it was outside of school, and there was a lot of alcohol and drugs involved in that, and I felt quite lost in my place. And I remember most of my school years, but the older I got, the more profound the experience of it was for me, of just not really feeling like anybody actually knew who I was or understood who I was. So I always felt quite isolated in a sense and there was this sense of loneliness, I was the only person who thought the way that I thought or saw things the way that I saw them. And I wasn't the kind of girl who was super interested in like, I loved parties, don't get me wrong, but not for the reason of, like, I need to wear the right things and I need to have the right kind of makeup. In fact, 95% of the time I would get ready and then I'd go and meet up with my girlfriends and they're like, yeah, I ain't wearing that. And then they'd spend the next hour doing me up, you know. So, I had these two contradictory experiences, I suppose, as a teenager. And, and then I had some home stuff going on as well. My parents went through their divorce when I was a teenager as well. So that kind of exacerbated things, I suppose. After that, I went through some eating disorders and a whole heap of other stuff, trying to regain control of my life. And after my dad left, I remember there was like this innate knowing that if I didn't sort my shit out in relationship to how I felt about him leaving, then I would repeat that same dynamic through the rest of my life. And so don't ask me where that came from, I'm not sure, but it was just clear to me. And so I suppose my desire for personal development actually started way back then.
Wow.
Because I really wanted to understand myself and make sure that I was not going to attract that same looping pattern of the perceived abandonment.
And what age was that?
He left when I was 15.
Wow. It took me twice as long to catch on to that.
Yeah, I'm very grateful for him leaving, to be honest. Like, obviously there's time lapse in between me being angry about it and me being grateful about it. But now I'm very grateful for it because it really did push me off that cliff of wanting to know more and wanting to understand, like, what drives people to make decisions that we don't understand. And why do some people deal with trauma in one way and other people deal with it in another way? Like, that fascinates me.
And do you remember, like the first few books that you started reading?
I actually hated reading as a kid, and I didn't really start reading until I started travelling. So when I left high school, I started travelling, and my idea at the time was I would find myself in the world. And I found my mirror in a best friend that I met, actually, and she was amazing, and she got me into reading. So at first, a lot of my books were like adventure and travel and finding yourself through travel, because that was my experience and my desire. And then the first kind of, what I would classify as the first sort of reflective growth book where you have to look at yourself, was probably actually the Celestine Prophecies. So it's like got that spiritual twist to it as well. And I actually read them backwards. So I got my hands on Secrets of Shambhala first, and then I think it's called The 10th Insight, and then Celestine Prophecies. But it was perfect for me, but they were actually the first books. My personal development journey initially started in my spirituality, and it evolved from there. So, and
when prior to actually making the decision of travelling, would you say, you were looking for like, I don't know if it's the right wording, but like an out to go and explore new things, ideas, and to essentially find yourself?
Yeah, I mean, I always wanted to travel. So my dad was in the Navy, so he would come home from trips away and he would tell us stories about Egypt and, the Middle East and Asia. And like, I just remember, like, that was my favourite part, not my favourite part of him coming home. Obviously him coming home was really important as well, but like, that was like a little ritual that we would have. And so from a very young age, I was like, I'm travelling the world. So that was never in question. But using the travel to find myself became conscious in my teenage years, I suppose. But I didn't really think about it in those terms at that stage. I just wanted two things. I wanted the pain to stop because I was in a lot of pain. And I wanted to live out my dreams, and that had always been my dream. So why not do them both in the same time? The challenge is, of course, that wherever you go, you find yourself, right? So it didn't matter where I went, the pain came with me. And that actually became really apparent to me around when I was actually 30. So my girlfriend that I travelled with died in a car accident around that time. Not long after I met you, actually. Literally when we'd left from that trip, I found out. And to commemorate her life, I decided to read my children my old diaries from when we were travelling. And I open the first one up and I start looking through the pages and I'm like, well, that's not appropriate. And then I closed it and then I opened another one, and, you know, this theme was really, really clear, is that I was actually processing a lot of my pain through my diaries. I wasn't actually writing down, you know, today we went to this town and we did this and we did this and we did this. It was more like, I don't understand this and this and this, and I see this, and this is, you know, why is this happening and how has that come about? And I was sort of questioning reality and my experience more than documenting my experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, I was documenting my experience, but my inner experience rather than my outer experience.
And is that something that you would recommend for someone who might be going through something similar?
Yeah, if they're drawn to it, definitely. You know, I don't journal so much nowadays. I go through phases of it, and so, you know, it's like anything. I have a very high need for variety. So for me personally, it's important for me to change up the ways that I process my experience. Otherwise, I get really, really bored and it just spirals me down. But I know, you know, for other people who have a really high need for that consistency and that one thing, then absolutely, for sure, like if you want to hold on to that one thing, it's a really great way of seeing your thoughts. For me, I need to hear my thoughts because I'm very auditory orientated. So for me, I've got like my sister and a couple of girlfriends who we have kind of an understanding. You know, they know that I need to verbalize to process, and so they'll just sit there and listen to me like spew out crap, you know, so that I can hear it back. And then when I hear it back, I can then go, that's actually bullshit. Okay, I see what I'm doing there, you know, blah, 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 blah. Which I used to get from writing, but now I find it more beneficial for me to verbalise. But it is important who I choose to do that with, obviously, because some people would take it to mean that what you're saying is what you believe to be true all of the time. Whereas the people that I do it with understand that that's where I'm in that moment, and I need to do that for the process of finding my truth.
So you'd say that, like, you know, finding someone that is open to, you know, listening to whatever your thoughts are, whether, you know, you just, you know, thinking out loud, which is essentially what you're talking about, having that person that you can rely upon to hear you out and not judge is a very important process.
Absolutely. And, you know, ask some pointy questions when they're required as well, you know, like, you know, there's a very big difference. Obviously, I have my own people that I would classify as my coaches or like my professional reflectors. And they're going to, you know, not so much listen to the story because that's not what they're interested in. They're more looking for how to help me move through patterns and stuff and shift those. But when I feel like, yeah, it's just knowing what you need in the moment. You know, sometimes we just need that sounding board, and so I access the sounding board when I need the sounding board. And sometimes we need someone just to kick our ass and be like, come on, like, you know, how about if we look at it this way? Or you know, is it possible that what you're telling yourself right now is complete nonsense? Like, let's just look at that possibility. And if it's a possibility, then what do you think that's protecting you from? You know, asking those kind of questions to move you through it faster. And I tend to try the sounding board personally first because I see if I can work it out myself. And then if I'm really stuck, I'll go for some professional help and just be like, right, let's kick my ass, please.
And with these mentors and, you know, people that you reach out to, on the business side, have you just happened to, you know, meet them along the way on your journey, or have you gone out and paid for like a mentor service?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I've actively sought extremely beneficial mentors in the sense that they have surpassed the results that I want. I want to work with people who not only know how to get where I want to go, but how to take me further than I even dream is possible, you know, so... And that has taken me some time to figure out, and it's taken me some missteps along the way of working with different people who I thought was that, and it wasn't, you know, and that's okay. I just feel like that's part of the journey as well. But yeah, I'm very lucky to be supported by some incredible people these days, who really look at not just human behaviour, but universal principles with, you know, human behaviour inside of that, and then business as part of that. And so it kind of like it's a little bit of an inception thing for me, because if we're trying to move against universal principles in any capacity, we're going to feel pain. But then we need to understand ourselves as to how to best utilise those things based on our own nature, and how does business work within the dynamic of those two things, you know?
And how did you go about finding those mentors?
For me personally, I am a very big advocate of listening to other people's experiences. So I know myself quite well. I'm not a researcher. I don't sit down and Google things for hours. That would do my head in. I ask people, and I pick their brains about their experience, and I ask them questions around, you know, what they felt the benefits were, where the drawbacks were, where do they feel like they're authentic, where do they feel like there's like edge for them, or where do they find discomfort in the relationship with them, and you know, do they feel like it was a worthy investment, and why not? Like, you know, actually dive deep into some questions. But I'm a very extroverted person, so that for me is the way that I best learn. It's the same thing with like online learning. I'm terrible at online learning. I really suck at it. But get me in a room with someone and I'm going to just absorb everything I can. So again, it's about really figuring out what works best for you. Like if you're an analytical person, like my partner is a very research-based mind. And so if he's going to do something, he will research the shit out of it. Whereas as soon as I kind of find a hint towards someone or get a nudge towards someone, I'm a very intuitive purchaser. And so I'll feel whether or not it's right or not for me. And regardless of everything else that's been said, I go with my gut instinct and I either go for it or I don't. So, but I'm also okay with the consequences of that. Like if it's not what I thought it was going to be, which is very unusual, to be honest, like the percentage of that is quite small. But if it is, then I'm okay with that. I'd rather take the risk and figure it out. But I'm quite comfortable with risk. So it's, it's easy for me to do that.
It's quite a spin out because I feel like I'm speaking to like a more intelligent version of myself.
Well, we're all just mirrors of one another, right? So I think that you're speaking to a part of yourself that perhaps you don't own completely, maybe is more accurate.
As someone who would say who's way smarter than me. So let's look into, you know, some of the things that you're doing within your business. You run a what am I trying to think of? You run the
online community.
I was thinking when your retreats.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, we haven't run them for a while just because of the way, well, two reasons, the way that the world has been, but actually more predominantly I've had health issues over the last couple of years, and it's really, haha, universe, love you so much, that, a lot of what I talk about and kind of teach people is around self-care and honouring yourself and putting yourself first, and really making sure that you are number one, because that's where everything else comes from anyway, right? And so the universe goes, okay, wicked, time to prove it. And early 2020, very early 2020, so before COVID hit WA, it didn't really ever hit WA, but before we were locked down and things like that, my legs dropped essentially. So my sensation in my legs just kind of went, and I talk about this in my TED talk. It was sort of this moment of everything just went really haywire, like I was about to trip balls essentially, like, you know, some serious psychotropic medicine was kicking in, although I hadn't taken any, and all the senses of touch all felt really weird. So it was like this layer of probably like 10 centimeters of flesh around my body. All of my body started to feel like it was jelly, like it wasn't fully solid. My mind obviously went, my vision went, I felt really, really nauseous, and that was the first sort of sense of what was coming. And then that kind of came and went over the next couple of weeks in larger and larger durations of time of my body being in that state, and shorter durations in between. And then, by about March, I was well and truly bedridden and stayed in that state for about 4 months. So, didn't have the capacity to walk to the toilet by myself, didn't have the capacity to do the dishes, cook dinner, check the mail, nothing. Like, you know, I've got 3 kids, living by myself with my 3 children. It was a very, very challenging time. However, I was really extremely well supported, so I'm very, very grateful for that. But that sort of sent me on this journey of the application of everything that I'd been learning, right? So you take it from knowledge to wisdom in the application of integrating information. And that journey kind of lasted about a year really before I started feeling safe, quote unquote safe in my body and my body's capacity to actually like go for walks by myself without needing to at least take one of my kids with me in case my legs dropped, you know, and being able to like go to the shops by myself. And I didn't drive for a very long period of time because I was scared that was going to happen whilst I was driving. And then just as I was coming out of that and I was all geared up to do the TEDx talk, I had a ovarian cyst burst on my left ovary, which I'd never had before. And that created a world of internal bleeding, and which was misdiagnosed for about 7 hours. So I ended up losing just over 2 litres of blood internally by the time they figured it out. And then obviously they rushed me into emergency surgery and fixed that.
Jesus.
And I came out of that a week before I did the TEDx talk. So the TEDx talk, as you can tell, I do speak relatively fast, and the TEDx is a very slow talking because I was so high on pain meds. But they kind of rocked me, and it was really interesting because I came out of that surgery and there was a few things that were just really, really like, you know, when things just like, it just clicks in your brain, like there is just no questioning it anymore. There was 3 things, and one of them was I needed to stop everything. Stop trying to get back out there. Stop trying to build my business. Stop trying to be everything for everyone. Just stop, you know. The next one was that my TEDx talk could not be prepared. I had to stop trying to prepare it. And I just needed to, if I wanted to be fully seen, I needed to allow myself to be fully seen. So that was really clear. And then the last thing was that we spend so much of our time worried about other people's opinions of us, you know, and we want to make sure that people approve of us or that we're seen to be worthy of X, Y, and Z, you know, worthy of love or worthy of accomplishment or worthy of success, or like we've proven ourselves to our parents or whatever loyalties that we have with people, you know. And at the end of the day, when you die, you take none of that with you. And so it kind of became this really funny thing for me. So I couldn't stop laughing about it for ages because it was just, it's the funniest thing that we waste so much of our life trying to be something for other people that we perceive that we could possibly understand what their opinion is of us anyway. And, you know, at the end of the day, when you die, what do you take? You take the love that you've shared. That's it. That's all you got, you know. So why we... And why, particularly for myself, that's why it's funny, right? Because I was reflecting on my own journey, like why have I, or why we do this, spent so much of our life trying to be something that we're not, you know, and in that trying to be something that we're not, we actually lose the intimacy, aka love, of that moment, which is the actual thing that we get to take with us on our soul's immortal journey. So yeah, it just became, that was the third piece that it still makes me giggle today. We're funny creatures.
So, you're a mother of 3.
Yes.
It's already challenging as hell to run a business just by itself. And then you put on top of that, you're looking after 3 children. And then you get hit 2 times, like 2 serious big Mack trucks smack you by. What gives
3
you...
But continue, yeah.
What gives you the... What drives your soul to, you know, just to keep going?
Well, it's interesting, right, because I had to really question that. And in 2019, I did a course called Relationships in You with MJB Seminars, highly recommend. And in that course, I equilibrated my relationship with my dad. So I've obviously spent a lot of time on my relationship with my dad, you know, and I felt like I had made peace with it until I met these guys, and they were like, bullshit. They called me and I was like, fuck, you know. But I went into this seminar and I really wanted to find peace with that relationship. And I'm not going to go into the bits and bobs of the seminar because it's not what we're here for, but what I got out of it was that I'd spent all my life trying to prove myself to my dad, to prove that I was okay, to prove that, you know, I was okay, you know, in the sense of like my brother and my sister both have jobs, they have mortgages, they have quote unquote successful Australian lives, and I've spent most of my adult life travelling from one place to the next. I've had a broken relationship. I've gone after dreams that have failed over and over and over again, you know, like, and so there was this sense that I was a disappointment, and that was driving a lot of what I was doing. And then when I equilibrated that with him, it was like, I know in my heart that my dad's proud of me, he loves me, and he's stoked that I'm his daughter. I get that now, you know. And after that, that kind of started the questioning, and then everything that happened with my body just added to that questioning. And then after the cyst burst, that was probably the lowest low, because after that happened, probably about 4 months after, when I had given myself that time to just stop and do nothing, my body was healed, but my mind was still attached to the idea that my body wasn't healed. So there was like this time period where I was scared to do anything, and I didn't have that same driver of proving myself to my dad anymore. So it was like I didn't have that thing that, like, the trauma to push me. And so I was just like, well, what's the point? Like, why am I even doing any of this? You know, why would I push myself to a point where I could get sick? Why would I push myself to a point where my kids might not have me around, you know? Their dad's already not with us, so I'm really all they, you know, quote unquote, all they've got as far as the parent is concerned. And so there was all of that, like, why do I want to do this? Do I want to do this? And I really had to ask those questions. And what I discovered was that I'm obsessed with it, to be honest. Like, I love it. I absolutely love it. I love understanding deeper layers of myself, and I absolutely love that moment when you see somebody's face, when they have the moment of transformation and they just get another layer of love, and, you know, the possibilities that open up for people in that moment there's no words for it, you know, it's just breathtaking. And I just want to do that over and over and over again. So that's what drives me now.
That's it's pretty amazing. And something that you touched on, which was the third Big Mac truck.
Yeah.
What was it like dealing with, if you don't mind going into it, we don't have to.
I'm happy to talk about anything.
The passing of your ex.
Yeah.
And I guess the dynamic of, you know, your children.
Yeah.
Getting through that. Yeah.
It was tough. Like, obviously. It was an unusual situation in the sense that when we had separated in 2013, and when we separated, he left, and so left like interstate left, and so he wasn't part of the kids every day. He wasn't even part of the kids every month. Like, you know, he would see them every couple of months, maybe once a year. You know, as time went on, it kind of extended out. So it was a challenging relationship for the kids before he passed, and I was homeschooling them through that period of time as well. So we lived a very unconventional life, I suppose, in a lot of ways. And when he did pass, he suicided. So, well, we believe that he suicided. All evidence certainly points to that, although there was no specific letter left or anything, you know. Yeah, it was heartbreaking, obviously, you know, having to tell my kids that, and then dealing with the quote unquote fallout, I guess, if you can call it that. It's like, you know, when somebody does suicide, their pain, and I know this sounds horrible, but their pain doesn't dissipate. It gets transferred, because nothing dissipates, everything is transferred. And so a lot of that pain hit the kids. And my eldest got hit quite hard because she had probably like the closest love-hate relation. Like, obviously she loves her dad, but she was challenged by that relationship as well. And yeah, she spiraled into some pretty hard depression for probably about 18 months, really. And she wanted to continue to be homeschooled through that period of time. So we were still homeschooling her, which meant that she didn't have the time barriers or the time constraints that school provides that forces you to do certain things. Whereas my middle daughter said to me after her dad passed, a couple of weeks after, she goes, "I just want to be a normal kid, Mum. I just want to have normal kid problems." And I said to her if she wanted to go to school, she could, and she told me that she didn't think she was smart enough. So, of course, I enrolled her, because that's not a belief that we're going to hold for the rest of her life. It's just not acceptable to me. And she's now thriving in school. She's doing amazing. But she did go to school. She started school about 6 months after he passed, in year 7, and then their youngest brother started grade 1 at the same time. And so they had school to kind of keep them into some sort of routine of get up, go out of the house, socialise with people, do the thing. Whereas my eldest daughter didn't have that. And so I was watching her, obviously, but also allowing for her to move through her process of depression. And it's this fine line sometimes, you know, parenting, as I'm sure you're finding out. And like, I wanted them to see me grieve as well. I didn't want there to be any shame around grief. I didn't want there to be any shame around how he died or the choices that he made, because I don't think there is. And so we've always been really open and honest about everything that happened and how it happened and all that sort of stuff. But there was definitely a point where she was staying up until like 4 a.m. on her PlayStation, and then waking up at 3 in the afternoon. And then, you know, she asked me to go on antidepressants at one stage. And antidepressants is really one of the things that I would contribute her dad's downfall to. When he went on them, it really, it changed him. And he stopped caring about the repercussions of his behaviours and the outcomes. So I personally don't think that's a great idea, especially not for a teenager, if you have other options. So I said to her, no. And I said, you know, you really, like, we need to try doing something different. Like, how about we have a bedtime, you've got to wake up at a certain time, you've got to go for a walk, get out of the house, get some sunshine, vitamin D. Obviously, those things contribute to your state of depression. You know, have some water. Like, what are the tangible things that we can do here that's going to improve your overall well-being? And of course, I'm mum, so I know nothing. And so she was like, "You just don't understand me." You know, "I hate you," blah, 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 which is, you know, teenagers, so that's fine. But I had got her working with a coach about 6 months earlier, and she had quite a good relationship with this coach. And this is, I think, the power of tribe, and why it's so important to have your kids supported by well-educated, good-hearted human beings in their times of struggle. So she then went to the coach and said, "Mum doesn't understand me, blah, blah, blah. I want you to sit her down and tell her that she has to let me go on antidepressants." She's so funny. And bless her, this woman said, okay, I'll do you a deal. I have a challenge for you over the next 6 weeks, and I want you to do this challenge over the next 6 weeks. If at the end of those 6 weeks you still feel the same and nothing's changed, I will sit down with you and we'll have a conversation with your mum. But you've got to do this first. Then you get your outcome. And she went, "Okay, what is it?" "Drink more water, get up earlier, go to bed earlier. You've got to go for a walk every single day. You know, you've got to start socialising." Basically said everything that I had said, but she's not me. And so my daughter agreed to it. And it's so funny, within 3 weeks, she comes bouncing out of her room one day and she goes, "Oh my God, Mum, I have had the biggest mindset shift." You know, and she was, you know, that was sort of the beginning of her coming out of her darkness. And we've had many, many discussions. We have a very close relationship, her and I, and we talk about all sorts, like she thinks similar to me, so we love dissecting things together. And she said to me, she's like, why did you, like, I can't believe that you just didn't do anything about the fact that I was in my depression. I said, oh, no, you misunderstand the situation. I was watching you, but we all need to find our edge, and we all need to bring ourselves out of that and know that we have the capacity to do that. Otherwise, when you're 20, 30, 40, 50, and you find your edge, you're going to think that you need to rely on someone else or something else to get you out of that, and you don't. You've got that capacity within yourself, So that's how I've really tried to work with the kids through this, of just like, and my middle daughter is completely different. She processes things extremely differently. She's planning on going to Norway this year on exchange. She's got the travel bug as well. So, but yeah, and so they're all really different in how they process it. But essentially, like, my goal as a parent is to provide a safe place for them to feel their pain and to know that they have the capacity to turn things around, and to also feel the extremes of their joy and know that that comes from within themselves and not from other things. So that's, essentially that hasn't changed through the grieving process or anything else. It just kind of provided this extreme environment of those emotions. And we all learnt a lot in that, myself included, so.
So I actually just read a post on LinkedIn yesterday, and it touched on a young boy who unfortunately committed suicide.
This is a 12-year-old?
Yes.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Yeah, and it just made me think, like, going off, what you're saying there, and how you've, gone through that process with your daughter. Is that, obviously, every situation is different.
Absolutely, yeah. And there's, I don't know, first of all, I can't imagine what their parents are going through, and by no means do I think that they have any blame or anything in that situation. I know that Leila did go through a stage of self-harming, so she was cutting and things. One of the reasons that I started homeschooling my kids is because my second daughter was talking about suicide when she was 8. And that to me is ridiculously young to be even contemplating stuff like that,
Blows me away.
Yeah. And, the school counsellor basically was seeing her, and she had the school counsellor convinced of all sorts of wonderful stories that, school counsellor called me up one day and she was like, oh, so Tapsy's told me about your living experience, and, I just want you to know that there's support out there. And I was like, thank you so much. What are we talking about? So she had her convinced, I suppose, because she was still feeling the effects of, after their dad left, we were really struggling financially. We were on church food boxes, op shop clothes, and vouchers for the op shops. Like, it took a lot to come out of that space of debt and have a capacity to pay for the living expenses of myself and my children again. And so she was still, I suppose, reeling from that, but we had actually gotten out of it. Like, we were actually in the best financial position we'd been in for a long time. And after that conversation, the counsellor said to me, look, I'm really sorry, but I'm not qualified to help your child. And I went, okay, cool, no worries. Somebody needs to help her though. So I looked for a specialist in children's self-harm, and went and saw a specialist at the hospital, and he said to me, has your daughter actually hurt herself? I said, no, she's just talking about it. He goes, well, I'm sorry, she's not severe enough for me to be able to help her. And I went, right, so my daughter actually has to begin the process of creating the strategy of I experienced pain, therefore I hurt myself, in order for us to get help. Like, it's already kind of a step too late, do you know what I mean? So that's when I decided to homeschool them, because I was just like, well, I can, if I've got her 24/7, then I can really hone in. But it is hard because there are gaps upon gaps upon gaps in the system. A lot of families are in spaces where both parents have to be working, or we have other commitments, we have other children, and then if you've got a child who's not communicative, like my middle daughter, she's really not very communicative around her emotional experience, but she is very good at expressing her emotions. So when she cries, she sobs. When she's in pain, she will go into the shower fully clothed and just like let it out, you know, which is beautiful. I love that. But she does have that ability to let it out. But if you've got a child who doesn't know how to do either of those things, it would be really, really hard to actually gauge where they're at, you know. So yeah, it's a hard one. I feel like if you're concerned about your kids, don't listen to anyone telling you that they'll be right. Just do whatever you can and keep looking until you find something that works, and keep trying and keep trying and keep trying and keep trying. And you know, if the worst does happen, then obviously there's a process within that as well. And yeah.
Sounds like pretty good advice to me.
Yeah, it's definitely a hard one to deal with, but I do believe that we have the capacity to deal with what we experience. So
to switch it up a little bit, let's talk a little bit about your business.
Yep.
And you know, what you've got planned for the near future. So we did have a little chat prior to this starting, and Nerida's also going to start up a podcast in the next few weeks, month or two, once everything settles down. And yeah, let's learn a little bit about what you're doing at the moment, like the whole embodiment specialist and change maker.
Yeah, so a couple of years back I studied psychosomatic therapy, which is the connection between the body, mind, emotions, and how the emotions essentially manifest through the body. So we can read your face and kind of talk about the emotional strategies that are playing out, or that you have in build as part of your foundations and stuff like that. You can do that through the whole body, but then you can also access healing through physical touch by accessing emotional holding points in the body, which is called psychosomatic healing. So I do that on a one-on-one basis. That's the only thing that I really offer on one-on-one these days. So I do face readings and I do somatic healing. My main focus...
What is my face telling you?
That you're a lovely guy.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. Yeah, I love it. Like I just like, you know, every single line, you know, has something to say. So yeah, I would love to actually do your face reading one day. So I'll get a photo of you and then I'll do it, and you can tell me what you think. Yeah, but my main focus at the moment is actually building out a community called Samashti, which Samashti is a Sanskrit word. It means the embodied whole, and you know, I truly believe that we are here to know ourselves. I believe that's what our purpose is, and to know all of ourselves. And you know, this community for me is about contribution. I've realised over the last couple of years that I don't need to do anything to prove my worth, and that I will always be provided for. So I'm not worried about any of that anymore. I just want to work with people and help people to see the brilliance that they are, and to really expand their capacity to feel and to give and to experience love through a whole heap of different measures, and, you know, removing trauma and understanding oneself, and understanding the patterns that are all around you that are kind of communicating to you. You know, like we all have these like messages that come in life through repetitive patterns in relationships, or through our body. Like our body communicates with us all the time, or, you know, it could be a radio on the song that keeps on, just hits you in the feels in that moment. So like being able to kind of read those signs, because when we get that the universe has our back, it removes fear. And I think that what holds a lot of people back from truly being themselves is this idea that they're not good enough, and, you know, that they're not going to be loved, or whatever, or that they're not going to be successful at that thing that they really want to do. And so it's all fear-based. So if we can get to a point where we remove the fear out of the equation, or at least really quieten it down, I don't think you ever really get rid of it, but if we can quieten it down and put it in a rational space, then we can kind of move to the side that anxiety that holds people in paralysis. And I'm a big believer that if everybody was doing what they're here to do, the world would be a much more beautiful place. So I really want to empower people to do that as much as possible. So yeah, Samashti is an online group. You can jump on board. It's 30 days free. See if you like it. I know there's a lot of people offering stuff, and you've got to spend huge amounts of money before you even tried any of their services. So we do group coaching calls on there, we do group training, and then there's a whole heap of other stuff through the weeks that are just sporadic, and some meditations and breath work, some lives, whatever. Little challenges and little exercises to expand that awareness for yourself as well. And then from there on, it's $1 a day. That's it. No locking contracts, nothing to sign.
I was going to ask you the question of what would you recommend someone doing on an economical level, like whether it be like a book or a video or something like that. However, 30 days free. Yeah, you can't knock that at all.
Yeah, well, like I say, this is really about adding service now. I really don't feel the need to do anything else outside of that. I am very excited to get back into live events. However, with things the way they are, I think we've still got another year of unstable venue access. Let's call it that. So I'm not gonna lock anything in the next 12 months, just for my own peace of mind and for everybody else's. And it really gives me the time that I want to focus on building this community and really getting that humming, which is one of the other lessons I suppose I've learned in the last couple of years around business, is really to focus on that one thing and just build out that one foundation. I've always been a bit of a bluebird in the sense that I love there's this shiny thing and there's this shiny thing and I can do this and I can do that and I can, I love offering this and I love offering that. And whilst it kind of fills my cup of uncertainty up, like I get what I need out of it, the people I'm working with don't get what they need out of it. And so I've learned how to just focus on the one thing for my business and provide variety within that one thing. So that's why we do my sporadic little things through the week, because it keeps me uncertain.
So for someone looking to get into business, let's say they're in a similar situation to what you were, and they've got like 1, 2, 3 children, what would you advise them to do? What would be like the first couple of steps for maybe a single mother who's like looking at the idea of possibly going into business?
Yeah, it depends on a few things. Like one of the things that I wish that I had that I didn't have, or that I perceived that I didn't have, it's probably more accurate, was a cushioning. So because there wasn't that steady income, obviously I got assistance from Centrelink and I had some child support, and that was helping with things whilst doing the homeschooling and running the business and everything like that. But it still felt like I had a story around that I couldn't rely on that. And so looking back now, what would have really benefited me was, doing a day or two part-time somewhere, just to give me that little bit of cash flow to ease the nerves, because when we're in a state of emotional scarcity, that feeds through everything that we do in business. And so what you attract then is scarcity back, because like attracts like, and this is just the way the universe works. So I'd highly recommend if you can do that. And, it doesn't matter what the job is, go and work at a shopping centre and scan the veggies, or do some cleaning, or, work with people who need some caring, or, whatever it is that you can do, or if you can fall back onto a career that you had before children or whatever. I'd highly recommend doing that on a part-time basis, and then spending the time that you have outside of that building the business. And the other thing that I would recommend is trying to be, and I know this is a hard one, it's so easy to say, but trying to be disciplined with work time and family time. Because one of the things that I feel like I did that everything's perfect, but one of the things that I would recommend for people, knowing what I know now, is having that ability to turn your brain between one or the other. I felt like I floated a lot of years feeling like, when I was with my kids, I should be working with my business. When I was with my business, I should be hanging with my kids. And it was just torturing my own brain, And so I think we do that a lot as parents, is we torture ourselves thinking that we should be doing something else. Like, we're never doing good enough, we're never doing enough, we're never giving our kids enough, we're never showing up for our businesses enough, or our passions enough, or we're never showing up for ourselves enough. And it's like, we just need to give ourselves a bit of a break and allow ourselves to be in whatever we're in whilst we're in it. So I don't necessarily think that needs to be a tangible physical shift, but if you can cultivate that mindset from the beginning, I think it would be really helpful, because then you're actually able to focus on what it is that you're doing, and it's a good thing to do in general in life anyway, just be a little bit kinder to yourself. So, yeah.
Definitely sound advice. Where can everyone find you?
Facebook or Instagram is generally the best one, just Nerida Mills on either of them. I do have a website, which is neridamills.com, and I've got a free ebook if you're interested, and I also have the So Much D group that you can join from the website as well. So, yeah.
I would also highly recommend going to watch the YouTube video from TEDx.
Yes.
It's incredibly moving. I was very felt like you're talking to my soul. Yeah, and this whole time today is, the way that you speak, the way that you talk. If you're not being moved by this conversation, I'd be very surprised. So,
Thank you.
Thank you very much for today.
You're welcome.
It's been my absolute pleasure. It's been far too long.
It has been a long time.
I think it's been about 9 years.
Yeah, we met in 2012.
Yeah.
Because my son was 3 months old.
Yeah, so definitely have to do this again. We've got so much more to dive into. Nerida Mills, thank you very much again.
Thank you.
Cheers. Well, guys, I hope you enjoyed. I know I did. And this is the Success Minded. And thank you very much for watching. Cheers. Bye.